Hello, and welcome to the new series of the Next Truth podcasts, Let's Ask Questions. Today I'm speaking with Adrian Bejan, distinguished professor at the Duke University. He is an American professor who has made contributions to modern thermodynamics and developed his constructal law. Well, what is this law? What is it predicting? And how is this law related to his latest book, Time and Beauty: Why Time Flies and Beauty Never Dies?
I propose we start the actual discussion for this minuscule podcast of yours.
Minuscule podcast. Thank you so much, Professor.
No, I'm aiming for a highly impactful per minute discussion here. Look, Maria, well, I think that your origins are very similar, but mine have to do with being raised from a ball boy as a basketball player, and I was very serious about that. And that sort of a training was extremely useful in academia for me. It is called the merit system. Merit system. The boy who can play plays, all right. And if the boy cannot play, he sits on the bench. Period. In other words, if the parents show up with their kid and they bribe the coach to insert the kid into the team, well, frankly, where I come from, that was not allowed. Okay, because sports was clean, completely clean. It was all about merit, and not only science, but Western civilization comes from your parts, Western Europe. So it's based on that. It was based on that. We're talking about Escher the other day and others. These people were happy and were not bribing anybody to applaud them. It was all very natural.
They walked their path that was driven by the heart and by
exactly. Absolutely, and that goes on a lot in science, except it is obscured by the armies and armies of industrial scale producers of data and information, which from my very humble point of view is noise. Noise, not design, or some would call it pattern, or short lesson to be remembered, or truth. By that I mean useful stuff. So reliable stuff. And so that's why I'm actually quite proud of what I just showed you. Hey, by the way, did I show you there's there's an art current here in the world called constructal law art. And yeah, that's right. And at the very top, there's a constructal painting from, I'll show you.
Yes.
This one is from Mexico City, from Santiago de Chile. This is from Madrid, Spain. And these three are mine, but they don't compare with, these are actual artists, people who exhibit in places like London and Paris and places like that. All of them ladies, by the way. They call it the constructal art. There are about 8 such artists. I mentioned them in the acknowledgement to the book Time and Beauty.
But that arm, what you are pointing out, I believe you said it was from Italy.
No, that one is from a lady artist in Santiago de Chile. Her name is Juana
Chile.
Gomez, Chile. And
that reminds me of Leonardo da Vinci, that arm, how it is being built up from the inside out. And you mentioned just your book, Time and Beauty.
yeah.
And I had the privilege to read it for a large part. And during these, well, sometimes I have to admit, sometimes struggling through what you are writing, but something came up to me, and that is Leonardo da Vinci, because you are talking about time, you are talking about beauty, you are talking about the constructal law, which is, in my opinion, more like building up, and Da Vinci and time, and that was popping up in my mind. So I think that this lady had a little bit of the same idea and the feeling while looking at your work as that I did. But the constructal law, before we dive into that, what is it predicting? What is it? What is this law?
The constructal law is the law of physics of evolution everywhere. Like any law of physics, the law is a compact statement summarizing observations of the one kind that occur in the billions. What's called energy conservation is a huge number of observations of that kind, not one contradicting the immensity of the others. So the first law of thermodynamics is that the compact statement, also known as conservation of energy. There's another, I'll give you another example from what I teach here, or what I've been doing all my career, also from thermodynamics. It's called the second law. It is the observation that anything, bio, non-bio, whatever, falling rocks, flows from high to low, meaning one way, not the other way. The other name for the second law, meaning the other compact statement, is irreversibility.
Okay.
Keep in mind, it has nothing to do with entropy. Irreversibility is the phenomenon. Energy conservation was the other phenomenon. And so then there's another phenomenon, which is the fact that configurations, which are as observable as the previous two configurations, are changing in time in an observable and also comprehensible time direction. That is the phenomenon. That's called evolution. Change after change in a perceived time direction. By the way, all these things, phenomena, are acts of human perception. They're the physics is ours. It's in our brains, okay? And change after change, perceived to have a direction in time, is evolution. It is universal as a phenomenon, bio and non-bio. It's familiar to everybody and anybody. And so the compact statement of all those observations, and I wrote it in 1996, is that for a flow system to persist in time, that means to live, to be observable, to be available for observation, it must evolve with freedom such that it offers access to its currents.
So what you are saying is that the constructal law is talking about behavior in evolution. but
Oh,
with one
no,
direction at a time.
not about behavior. It is about what I just said. It is about design change over time, if you want to put it that way.
But that is in a form behavior when you look at evolution.
Behavior is humanizing the discussion. The river basin is not an animal with conscience and whatever. The river to behave, to be trained to behave better. No, the tendency that is called constructal law is much more basic, and it predates obviously the biosphere, and it is what everybody knows, that the evolutionary flow configuration is everywhere. Without that, we would not be around today, because the world, I think the evidence is clear, the world did not begin with man. You see, it began with first of all, rivers and lightning, and these things called non-bio, and then the mixing of the Earth's sphere was enhanced greatly by the emergence of bio entities, and those bio entities themselves have proliferated and evolved into becoming much better mixers of the Earth's crust. I really mean that. From dust to dust is the phenomenon, and animals along their evolution have become much more effective in taking stuff from here and putting it over here, from birth to death.
So could have your law, the law that you have written, could have predicted, for instance, corona?
Oh, sure. In fact, the article that you published in TNT is about that. Virus is another entity that spreads. It spreads through physics processes, such as mixing through the air. Some would call it diffusion, but I think it's more complicated. It's convection, and also it is spread by carriers, animals, but also these days animals on vehicles, such as workers flying nonstop from Wuhan to Milano. So yes, that is predictable, not only it's like the spreading river delta, you see. So that's a spreading in time, but predictable as a flow configuration, as an architecture. It is for that reason that those who with experience in fighting pandemics have from the beginning targeted the main channels of spreading, or the main spreaders.
So it could have predicted, or it can predict the behavior or the movement of a bacteria, of a virus. Now, this is probably far-fetched from my side, but one of the things that popped up in my mind when you think about evolution and behavior in mammals, and well, we are mammals, the human species. At one point I was thinking, just what if, could it have been predicting this war between the Ukraine and Russia?
Of course. Yes, my preceding book called Freedom and Evolution is about the phenomenon that, and the big one, phenomenon, which is the evolution of the life of any species toward easier spreading, which really means greater and greater freedom.
Yes.
Freedom. You will look at, especially since now we have, Passover, the Exodus, and by the way, this is a behavior that is alive to this day. People want to be free. And there are many exhibits that support this short statement. You can flip through the history book. You don't have to read the pages. You just read the titles. Yes, literacy was liberating. Democracy happened. It was not commanded by Hitler or Stalin. I'm talking about from antiquity. The freeing of the slaves was an idea practiced by Alexander the Great. Look, these are things that are in us because this is animal design. And now coming to democracy, which is now it's embraced by lots of groupings on the globe. With democracy comes, yes, hierarchy, rotation at the top, and all of them are healthy things for, this is how societies advance, how they become wealthier and more and more peaceful, by the way. But human nature is such that every once in a while, at the very top of this hierarchy arrives an individual who is maybe unusually charismatic, or maybe unusually paranoid, or unusually envious of other people, or unusually gifted with a sense of inferiority, and therefore hatred of other people, who then behaves, or in fact, along the way, protects himself at the very top by an entourage of yes-sayers. And so that's, you have here the natural arrival of a hiccup in the evolution of that democratic society. That's what happened in Germany in 1933. Of course, the Bolshevik Revolution was the same thing. And charismatic was one, but the other one was the gun in the hand and the not hesitating to terrorize the society, or Mao with his great statement that power flows from the barrel of the gun, not from the voting booth, you see. And now, of course, we have Putin, who is the individual who for 20 years has been doing exactly what I said. In other words, I think, not by design, but by his own nature, repeating the path of a Hitler and Stalin, and his future is equally predictable. Meaning, I know what will happen to him. I cannot say when or how soon, because see, Maria, in the world, groupings that are how should I say, with a tradition of liberty, are not at the same level. Some are really insisting on it, and here I'm referring to the West, which includes brothers across the Atlantic in the Northern Hemisphere. But as you go farther and farther east, the population is, I would like to say, more and more dormant. It can put up with worse and worse until it explodes. So conflict is in the future, and the farther you go east, the the more cataclysmic it tends to be.
This law, this constructal law, can predict particular, well, I don't know if I should call it behavior, but let's call it movement. But that is predicting in the future. But how far can it look back? For instance, seeking an answer or a plausible answer for what was our ancestor. Is there also a possibility for your to use that for your law? Can we benefit in that way, perhaps, from your law?
Well, the law of physics that predicts because, well, it predicts if it is used by the person who asks questions. The law is the law. If you are interested in the origin of a particular species, you then read the law, and which speaks of a evolutionary trend toward greater access, which in animal design means greater efficiency for this vehicle, which is the animal, or greater speed if the animal is a predator, or also greater or better camouflage if the animal is a grazer, or for that matter, a more evolved form of organizing. Here I'm talking about usually the prey. The prey, say the zebra, is never alone. They're in a group, and on and on and on. The point is that the whatever we have on the in the bush today is the latest screen in the movie with a particular direction of the tape of that movie, and it is toward easier life, longer life, safer life, but easier life for the animal is less work per unit of food discovered and consumed, continuity, or say the instinct to reproduce that also depends on a lot of features of design having to do with perception and communication, that is communication animal to animal, and safety, and that leads to the family, the group, the and what you said earlier, behavior. All these things in retrospect make perfect sense, and of course then you start flipping through the books, and you discover from those who, especially these anthropologists from Germany, that they knew these things from, again, intuitively, that in the beginning Homo sapiens was solitary and hunting and gathering, and then he did that for his mate. They lived in one hut, surrounded by nothing except very dangerous predators, and on and on. I mean, the history that we learn, starting with Egypt, is just yesterday. The real story, if you want to talk about humanity, is what I just said. But and then the huge breakthrough with the adoption of the fire, which is essentially coming from thermodynamics, equivalent to discovering a new and much cheaper source of power for the human body, because with fire you can do all sorts of unheard of things, beginning with safety, but also cooking, meaning you now have food that was previously not accessible, and fighting disease, clearly, not to mention scaring off predators. And then, of course, along the way with fire, you protected your hut or little group against human predators. You know, people who would come to pillage what you and your ancestors had put together. By the way,
Yeah.
pillaging is what's going on in Ukraine. Pay attention, it's not just killing, pillaging. You know,
Okay.
pillaging, thievery. Everything that's prohibited in the Ten Commandments is going on during Easter in Ukraine. Perpetrated by the Russian forces. Pillaging. That's a pattern that those of us who lived under Soviet occupation in Europe know from the end of the Second World War.
It seems that our species is very destructive, and that evolution is still mind-dazzling. Somehow we cannot wrap around our minds around the reality of evolution.
Everything that is called nature or natura. There's no math in that. Physics is everything, and the everything includes not only I understand you are concerned about people. You know, you ask about humanity and stuff. No, everything means everybody, all the animals, large and small, including the invisible, such as the bacteria you mentioned previously, and then, of course, the rivers and the rock slides and avalanches and all the movement, the winds, the hurricanes, the snowstorms, the falling, the cracking glaciers, all of that is of course, the oceanic currents, big stuff. In fact, most of evolution is going on in the oceans. It's everything. Oh, and by the way, this is just the beginning. And then you look at our neighbors, the other floating celestial bodies, and then with these huge instruments and probes, space probes. Now we have a glimpse at evolution of astronomical scales of size and time everywhere, and they all show us they show us flow. The most recent pictures from the cosmos show basically rivers and ramifications of let's call them streaks of celestial bodies. Stars in the sky are not like a cloud of confetti. They're in fact a lot more like a spider web with shining light bulbs on every string. Think of me as an artist, you see, and because art and science is basically one thing, okay? And yes, I'm interested, I'm curious when I see coincidences, and I just spelled out a long streak of coincidences. They all mean evolutionary design. They all mean, and it's non-denominational. It is about that things are, of course, they are imbibed in infinite freedom, especially when you look at these things in space. And they have a movie that tells the same story, which is that with freedom, they organize, they flow together, they morph. And of course, in outer space, before you know it, meaning obviously you don't know it because we don't live long at all, they all collapse into bigger bodies, because of attraction. But that's a subject for cosmologists. The point is that for the mortals,
Yes.
for the mortals, the description from the less trained is good enough. which is the one I just gave you. Okay, you look around, and you see a behavior, an evolution that is the same as it ever was, toward greater access through the free morphing of the observable. And the observable, again, you as an artist, because I looked at your drawings, the observable is a field of vision endowed with contrast, lines on a background, bodies, celestial bodies on a background, if you want, or flowing water in a channel on a background of a much bigger thing that's not flowing relative to the water. Same with anything you want. The footpaths of gazelles through the tall grass. The path may look stationary, but if you have a high-speed movie, you'll see a river of animal mass flowing through along that path. It's the same with all of us, Maria, in the city. If someone would put light bulbs on top of our heads and make a high-speed movie, or sorry, slow-mo, whatever, they'll see streaks of you and Adrian left on the landscape, and those streaks are no different than the paths or the streaks of the water in river basins or river deltas, because it is natural for us to flow, to move more and more economically in us, because we're really, we're born yesterday, but our clan is much older, meaning in our case, the Judeo-Christian tradition is really a very, very rich book of conduct that has, of course, instilled in us the urge to have knowledge, to have science, to ask questions, to be nice to our elders, to do all these things that go without saying, you see, to do to others as we would do to ourselves, clearly. And these things are, of course, as useful as for the less evolved, I wouldn't say less evolved, because some animals are a lot older than humans. For animals not as powerful per unit mass as people, they have a long acquired knowledge of how to live better and better.
You speak about, you say our clan, human species, is older than we think of, but Darwin only wrote recently his evolution theory. I believe it was about 150 years back. I was also thinking about what somebody told me, Professor Hall, and he was talking about how that radiation can influence the carbon inside the earth and etc. and everything on the earth's surface. In the moment that we are taking out gases from the earth, that means that pressure is not in balance anymore by nature. And if we take all these elements together, with this carbon dating is absolutely incorrect. And now I'm thinking, if that is so, how can your constructal law be fact if that much elements are influencing evolution in general?
Well, I'm not familiar with with the speaker you mentioned and also with this topic, but by listening to you, I think you're discussing the evolution of a technology for performing measurements. Okay, and that is, of course, part of physics, definitely, because as I said, physics is this compendium of our perceptions, the recording of it in compact ideas or statements called laws, and the instruments. Previously, there were no instruments, but then when the instruments were invented, that was only the beginning of their own evolution to become more accurate and more deeply penetrating. Say the telescope of Galileo Galilei is now something completely, how should I say, fantastic. And photography or thermometry, all sorts of, we take them for granted today, but when they, by the way, most of them were born in where you come from. These things, and they're, of course, clock making, you see, measuring time. Yes, a big deal. That took a flight vertically upward during the past 300 years. And now it's become so accessible, meaning the measuring instrument that's basically cheap and derisory. You know, you buy a watch and then you throw it away, you buy a new one. That wasn't the case when I was a kid, by the way. So you see, so the evolution that comes from your example is part of the greater picture of evolutionary design, which has direction. These things, including the personal computer, but that's so recent, it obscures the frankly, the big picture. Writing. Back in the old days, by the way, a paper was extremely dear. People wrote on all sorts of things and then wrote on them again and wrote on, yes, or those who had nothing scratched, slabs of slate. Did you write on slate when you were a little girl?
Yes, I did. Of course.
I did. That's how I learned how to write. It was for fun, but my grandmother, who was an elementary school teacher, insisted that I begin properly in that fashion, and I'm so disgusted with myself that I don't have that slate anymore. It was so beautiful with a wooden frame and a stylus, obviously made of stone, and it was so beautiful. You could wipe it off with a piece of cloth, and the slate was as good as new. Yeah, no.
Yes, I remember that. I had done that as well, just to learn how to make the letters and etc. and how to write.
Exactly.
Even my teacher said that a ballpoint, for instance, was ruining your handwriting. That pen,
sure. Oh, now you take me.
They are ruining your handwriting, they said. So
yeah.
Yes, you start off with that, and then over time you get a very bad.
The next, this is great conversation. The next thing, which now I have, in fact, I am very proud of the fact that I have this instrument, several, ink pen with a quill. The quill where the tip, the harder you press, the wider the streak.
Yes, then it goes on. Yes, I have written with those things as well.
And the last time I was in Florence, I bought a new set, both the pen with extra tips and the ink pot as well. Yes, well, maybe I'm the only guy who bought that kind of thing in the whole city, but I thought it was extremely important, meaning the item and the place where I did the purchase, because once again, these wonderful things that we take for granted did not happen uniformly on the globe. Even more acutely, they did not happen uniformly in Europe. Yes, they happened primarily in parts of Europe where questioning was, first of all, there was greater wealth, greater security, yes, protection from pillaging, from Mongols and all sorts of other types. Those are the concern of the Eastern Europeans, not the Western Europeans. And so it's easy to create in peace. Okay. Even the most creative from Central and Eastern Europe found their sanctuary in Western Europe for creating and contributing to the immortality of, say, art or science.
I think true immortality lies in our mind, in our memory, which, by the way, is time. Which, by the way, is what you are writing in your book, Time and Beauty. And the complete title I have here is Time and Beauty, Where Time Flies and Beauty Never Dies. Professor, that one particular question. I have read your book, and I had that moment while driving in my car, looking over the countryside, and I was going, oh my God, he is so right. That is time. Now I understand it. But for those who haven't read your book yet, what is time?
Time is the human perception of change. Simple as that.
That is clear.
Yeah.
That is clear.
Yeah. And meaning before there was the word time, I'm going back to the beginning of language, because language too is an add-on, more recent than the adoption of fire. The observation that now is different than before, that dichotomy, that duo of two different things, and the fact that now happened after before, this is a constant and a repeating observation, where the difference between the new and old. So when language appeared, this was there were these pairs of obvious facts, one more recent than the other. And so that's change. And change, it has in itself direction, and that direction is time. Now, chronos is the one word for both. And only recently, again, I'm talking about yesterday, meaning Egypt, instruments began to appear. Instruments, yes, designed or contrived to measure the so-called passing of time, but the very modest and humble human being, looking at the shadow cast on the sundial, was observing change. The change in the position of the shadow. The instrument is one thing, but the perception is the old one, which is that of change. When I look at the time on my screen, I'm looking at the change in the numerals that indicate the time. So time is not what's proclaimed to be in physics. Time is a human perception. And this is why, along with that perception of change, comes the impression that as we get older, time passes faster. And there's a physics basis for that slight and gradual change in the perceived speed of time.
Each time when I'm listening to you and take all, put everything on one table, your book, the constructal law, the things that you say, constantly I come back to Da Vinci. Why? I have absolutely no clue. But somehow, perhaps, there's a thing in there, there's a connection in there. Talking about connection, what? Because the title of your book is Time and Beauty. What is the connection between those two, time and beauty?
Well, okay, I told you the physics of this perception called time, which is change. Beauty is a human perception of the fact that the image is more attractive. And I show in the book that the image is more attractive when it is scanned faster or more easily by the two human eyes. Ease of grasping the image has to do with several features that those of us who make drawings know. The shape of the image, the contrast in the lines of the image, the perspective or the impression of depth in the image, and of course the distribution of colors and other things of that type. Colors are in fact go hand in hand with contrast. So all those things put together make the difference between an image that's easy to grasp and one that is not. The animal, in this case the human animal, but also all the animals in fact respond the same way. The ones that get the idea faster are better off. So yeah, so they're attracted to getting it and then getting out of the way of danger. Simple as that. This is why.
Speed it and take it and speed out.
Correct. And along the way, again, from the oldest artifacts that exist, such as facades of temples and obviously now icons in the oldest churches and coming back, well, paintings hanging in galleries. These days, everything looks the same, like the business card. That's the shape. The flags of nations, the screen of the cinema or on the computer is shaped like most of these things that hang behind me. It is for this purpose. And along the way, of course, we don't even question. It's always been this way, Maria. What's it's so common goes without questioning. In physics or in science, the hardest thing to question is the most common thing in the human existence, and this goes back to the perception of time. The obvious is what you bring up with this atrocity in Ukraine, is the unusual. The unusual is inescapable by the fact that a free people lives quietly and prosperously goes without notice. Yeah, it's simply
yes. When you are living like I'm doing here in Germany, free and peacefully, it seems as if time speeds up before you understand that it has passed you. But when you are living, I can imagine, I haven't been there, but I can imagine that those people in the Ukraine, for them, time stops because
Exactly.
so much is going on, and so much complete focus on survival and the danger that is out there. Time stops. I can imagine.
Correct. In fact, I now remember my parents who were caught up in that mayhem at the end of the Second War,
Yes.
praying that time should go faster so that this thing would be over.
Yes.
Is the same sort of thing that goes through the mind of a person in prison. The person in prison is actually desiring a time that flies faster, and that person, in order to have that experience, must train himself or herself to do exactly the same routine every day, the same thing, to avoid visits, to avoid whatever correspondence or phone calls. Just do the same thing every day, and that's the formula for reaching the gate to freedom faster in your mind.
It seems as if in the moment that these things happen, for instance, what you're saying, that somebody in prison or somebody at this moment in the Ukraine is observing the world flat, one thing at a time, in one direction, and they do not have the opportunity to look up what is speeding up time when you observe that. I believe that is exactly what you have been discussing in your book, Time and Beauty. You have written several books, and the latest book, like I said, is Time and Beauty. What does your writing career hold for the future?
Well, everything that you know about me happened without program, without now it was because of freedom. Here I have to give credit to my institution here, which is which is in fact offering freedom, and once again, what is all around goes unnoticed. Yes, I talk about the F word, the freedom, all the time, and people are surprised. I know that
the word is something else that doesn't have to do anything with freedom. Okay, fine. Anyway.
Well, look, okay, then I can use the L word, liberty, which is the
perhaps that's better.
yeah, or the E word, eleftheria, which is the origin of the Latin. The point is, look, what is all around goes unnoticed. By the way, so freedom, I actually tease them. I say, you don't think about it? Well, you'll think about it once you're deprived of it. Only if you lose it, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It's, by the way, Maria, it's just like hunger. In a wealthy and well-fed society, there's a lot of talk about that, but the audience has no idea. Okay, has no idea, and so yes, it's important to. I'm talking about the people who speak, to take a moment and buy a plane ticket and visit places where real hunger is the norm. The norm. In fact, you know where to go. You see pictures of malnutrition and starvation. Now, of course, you see them as these victims in Ukraine. So once again, what is all around you does not ring the bell of your curiosity at all. The usual is makes you a blind person. Okay, the unusual makes you an animal suddenly alerted to the arrival of danger. An animal with raised ears and eyes open and head moving in all directions. That's what you hunters know these things, or people who go on safaris know these things. I've spent a lot of time in that realm, and in fact, in the questionnaire you sent me, when I was growing up, my father took me with him. He was a veterinarian working on farm animals, big animals, because veterinarian comes from the word veterinus in Latin, which means beast of burden, the horse and the ox. It doesn't mean the dog and the cat and the gerbil, or these pets, or the guppy in the fish tank. No. So I went with him to villages where he would perform surgery on animals that needed such. By the way, surgery with zero anesthesia. And yes, this is, I'm talking about the 50s in Romania. And that's how I got the feeling for these things that you and I are discussing. I mean, my familiarity with zoology and biology comes from my parents, you see, and from the fact that back then all around me was a peasant society. The peasant society is about the let's call it the oneness of man and animal, the so-called domesticated animal. Another revolution in this path of humanity toward greater freedom and easier living, animal domestication, which began with the dog, the hunting dog. That is very much alive and on display in the pockets, large and small, of peasant society on the globe. It's worth getting to know these things before they disappear into the, let's say, the forgetting that threatens all of us.
Time. I think it's memory. I think evolution is in our memory. That is the beauty of your law, the constructal law. Professor Bejan, I see that we are far past the hour, and yeah, I have only that much time to broadcast. So, but before we close out, do you have any additional advice for young people who want to explore the complexity this broad field of physics is providing them?
I'm happy you ended this way. For the young, well, I tell my students exactly what you asked. It is important to walk through life with eyes open, to question absolutely everything. That is, question things that come from people you trust and people you question or you don't trust. But it's important not to be a sheep, you see, and that's how you earn your own respect, number one. On the other hand, it is through questioning that you discover the pleasure of finding answers. They are called ideas. Ideas are really like having a good drink. It is an instant shot of pleasure. And the creative people of all stripes have discovered this pleasure probably very early in life. And that's why they keep creating. And they're, of course, the artists we know, but traveling in my direction, they're the inventors of the contrivances, the creators of let's say, new ideas for the laws of science, for the books of science. Every single one is doing it out of this urge to live more and more happily. And when you live more happily, you achieve unwittingly all the other things that are good, which means longer life and happier people around you, family and clan or group, or and for that matter, safer nation. It's all for the better. If you are an individual who respects your God-given ability to ask questions, which come from keeping your eyes open and believing that you're somebody.
Exploring your curiosity, what creates over time this huge creativity, and thus by means of that one can find plausible answers for problems in science which people are struggling with today. Can people contact you via email or via social media when they have questions for you still?
Oh, the best way is to send me an email. Forget about the other things.
I'd like to thank you all for tuning in today on the Next Truth podcast's Let's Ask Questions. Make sure to visit our website. That is www.nexttruth.com. That is nexttruth, all in one word, .com. And let us know what you think about our podcasts. While you're at it, if you find value in this show, we would appreciate a rating on our website in the section Testimonials. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel and share the links on your social media. I am Marianne van Driel with The Next Truth. Let's Ask Questions. Be sure to stay tuned for our next episode.